Whenever I think about the internet and we have a conversation with the internet, you think of the two things that have been mentioned here, which is kind of net neutrality and universal access, which I always find akin to kind of a utility versus the big business sense where you want competition, you want fast improvements of speed and prices and whatnot. But these seem to be on very opposite ends of the spectrum. And is it reasonable to expect that we're going to get the best of both worlds in the sense that we want everyone to have internet, but yet we also want, it doesn't make business sense to give everyone the internet. It makes business sense to put it in the most profitable areas. So how are we going to get both ends of the spectrum and expect that that's going to work in the future?
I'm not sure about the second part of your question, but in answer to the first, how are we going to get that? Well, we're going to insist on it. I don't think that they're necessarily irreconcilable. I know, my preference would be if we had to choose between one or the other. But out of deference to Rocky, I'll restrain myself and not declare what that preference would be. But
true to his name.
Afterwards, meet you at the bar. But I do not believe that they're irreconcilable, and I think we have in the past seen, and I'm no expert on this, and I stand to be corrected if not attacked, but there have been in the past regulatory environments that seem to be able to accommodate both sets of interests, right, in regard to telecoms at least, and in regard to other public utilities. Those regulatory environments are now gone, have been for some time, and I'm not sure that we want to resuscitate those models necessarily, but they at least provide an illustration of the simple fact that it's possible to do that, to have both.
Easy option as well as different technologies. Wireless may apply in certain areas that in-the-ground technologies won't. So from that perspective, I think you can bridge a lot of different issues just by going that route, where the disparities from one end can be covered with either going wireless or line of sight type technologies, where in-the-ground technologies are downtown. So that may be the easiest and quickest way to get there, but it will require some help probably from the government in some forms, which is, I guess, why we've got, $225 million right now that's been put into that program.
I think where both of these fit in is that we don't really have a national broadband plan in Canada. There's no plan. So whether we're talking about net neutrality or if we're talking about increasing open access or competition, I think if we actually had a plan and had a discussion in the government, politicians were actually ready to start that conversation and start to create a plan, I think that those things would all fall into it, because anyone who understands these issues besides the big telecom companies generally wants open and a faster, more open, more accessible internet. So I think that we need to start talking about how to have a real broadband plan in this country, and that would take care of both.
So, I know. Want to get around to as many
yeah,
as we
I think
can.
I'm just going to kind of come around to you guys and just shoot off, and if we can try and get as many people to talk, would be great. Yes, I'm going to go around the room.
Hey, so if internet is public infrastructure, I'm just wondering, in terms of comparing that to water, if you're a company making money on water, you pay way more money. So just wondering about that. Like, why shouldn't people pay more money if they use it to make money?
Want to try that again?
Hello? So water is sort of a public, provided by the public. It's a part of our infrastructure. But if you're a company, if you use a lot of water, you pay industrial prices for water because you're a factory and you're using tons of it, right? So if the internet is like that, why shouldn't you pay more if you're making money off of it?
And the people who aren't actually paying that money, like, we don't sell water, so why the hell should we have to pay just as much as water?
It should be free for most people, but why not charge?
It should be like a graphic or a chart, whatnot.
I think that's actually how it is structured currently. I mean, you've got different business rates versus residential rates at the moment. Whether that's right or wrong is another story, however, because it costs technically about the same thing on the copper lines than it does for residential or business. And in many cases use it sometimes less than the residential side. So Right now it is that way.
So just to make it clear, we're not talking about the cost of the tier system on the one side. We're talking about the neutral network on the other side and the control of that and the cost.
So maybe the tier system is something that just okay. So the tier system, what is that? That's it.
This is why it's confusing.
I think that in terms of like the amount of internet we use, I think it does work like that, where you pay for the amount you use. The problem is that they're trying to control how we use the internet, which technologies are used,
It's like
and they're also trying to manipulate it.
whether you make lemonade or a gin and tonic with your water, right? They're trying to tell us what we can make with the water.
It's like the hydro companies, right? You pay for hydro. They don't tell you what appliance you can plug in. They don't tell you you can't plug in your toaster, but you can plug in your vacuum.
Right. The thing with that same environment, though, is it is also monopolized.
I think this guy just asked what is net neutrality, and you asked for it to be said in a soundbite form, so I think it would be helpful
Okay.
if that were reiterated.
I think Rocky just said it. It's, like the hydro system, you can, it's not, you can plug in a toaster, you can plug in a vacuum, you can plug in a hairdryer, you can plug in a television, right? There's no control over what you do on that with that electricity. So right now, you can do anything on the internet in terms of what application you would run, whatever content you want to use. So what a number of different providers, one or two providers, are proposing is to discriminate against the kinds of appliances or the kinds of content or the kind of purposes for which you can use your internet connection.
Well, it's not really proposing, they're already starting.
Yeah.
Does that
that
does
help?
that make sense? Does that make sense?
Well, I'm just wondering, there's this mention of tiered internet, and there's a mention of tiered internet, and so that's not addressed. I don't know what that means then. If it's not two different prices, what is tiered
That's a
internet?
duopoly everyone keeps talking about.
I think the ideology behind the tiered side is that they are trying to create that right now. So if we allow that to happen, you're going to find yourself with that classes type scenario that Derek was mentioning, where those who can afford higher speeds and higher usage will get better stuff, and those who can't, well, tough luck.
Okay.
I'll just explain a little bit more real quick. So right now the big telecom companies like Bell and Telus are slowing down access to a technology called BitTorrent. So that creates kind of that's the start of a two-tiered internet. So if you want to use those independent services, your access to those and your ability to use that is slowed down. If you want to go with Bell's Video Store or something like that, you have no restrictions. There's no slowing down of those technologies. So you can see here, if you want to be an independent and use independent technologies, there already is this two-tiered internet. And so as that expands, as they are allowed to slow down more technologies that are independent, more traffic that's independent, and speed up other technologies and create a special fast lane, then you have this two-tiered system. And you can pay them off to get on the fast lane, but if you don't have that money, you're on this slow lane using these technologies that may or may not work.
Yeah, so it's the guy who lines up at the bar or pays $20 to the bouncer to get me in.
I love it.